What's up, everybody? Sean Tucker here, A.Life Uncovered, episode 3, and we have a phenomenal crew here. Some of you guys have probably already recognized their faces. They are the foundation of A.Life, and so today's episode is all about uncovering the past, talking about the present, and actually looking towards the future. So I'm going to have all of them introduce themselves. They're going to share their name, when they started here at A.Life, and then we're going to jump into some Q&A. All right, so I got none other than Shay here. Shay, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Shay. I am Shay. When did I start A.Life? 2007.
Awesome, yes. Awesome. All right, founding leader.
George C. Wright II, and started in A.Life in 2007.
All right.
Yes.
Daenerys Smith, and I also started in 2007.
Perfect. So you can see here, everyone has a initial roots in 2007. So just guys, I want to kick it over to you, G. Just talk about how did A.Life become A.Life? Obviously 2007 was the first time we met on campus, but obviously it came from a place that started before that. So you want to just kind of share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. A.Life, it came just from a desire to get back on the campus and share the Word of God. That's where it started. And so we went back on, I know we have roots there from Abundant Life and where it started. And we know that I believe Pastor Leo spent some time on the campus as well. So years had passed, and I just thought, man, it's so many college students. At that time, I was around 24, 25, so I had just gotten out of that age bracket per se, but a lot of my friends at the time, they were kind of graduating, and I just really felt in my heart that it was time to get back on the campus and share the gospel. I didn't quite go in with grand plans of trying to reach the whole campus. I just felt that we can go on there and share the word, sing some songs. It would be fruitful. But little did I know what God had in mind, 12 years later, and that it would be something that would really affect a lot of young adults and a lot of college students, and leaders will be developed, and it would just be more than I ever dreamed of. Ephesians 3:20, he can truly do exceedingly abundantly above all that we can ask or even imagine. So it became something that it became a mantra for me that if I can just be obedient in taking the first step, then God will handle the rest.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so
I remember there was that summer leading into that 2000 fall. It was me, Maul, and a bunch of other football players, and you came out to this small little Bible study that we were having. And it was a very long and lengthy Bible study, a good like 3 hours. And it was like about 2.5 hours into it, we were like, okay, because no one was leading it, a bunch of football guys leading it. And I remember when you had walked out, and I think the next day we chatted and talked about it, and he was like, bro, I'm excited. I think it's time for us to get on campus. I just feel this excitement about having Bible study on campus, and then lo and behold, A.Life happened. And so for me, that was always that first initial picture of like, wow, something's in your belly for what A.Life can be on Rutgers campus. And so I'm sure you had to get a team together. I'm sure you started reaching out to people.
Absolutely. So I could not, I don't sing, so I said there was some young ladies who were singing, and Shay was there, and I think you were like a senior at the time, or a junior, senior, and so so reached out to Shay, and at that time it was completely a cappella, and so Shay and her sister, they were members of the church, and they sung a lot, and so they started singing. At that time, I really didn't think about putting together a leadership team per se. It was just like, okay, yeah, we want to have some music.
Right.
So come on, Shay and her sister can come and sing, and she started singing. And then in those early meetings, Daenerys just comes in and with such a heart to serve. And so it was like, can you help us out? And then she started to she pretty much, I always like to say, ran A-Life.
Right, absolutely.
I casted some vision, but Danira really came in and helped put the structure of what we would do in place, especially when we started going on retreats.
Yes.
And that became a lot of work. Actually, that was most of the work every year was planning for these retreats, which would start in 2010.
Yeah. So Shay, you want to just jump in? Just what did that feel like to initially be on campus, still a student, and now you're serving?
Right. When I came to serve A-Life, I was very honored to do it. I felt like it was a sign from God that He really had another path for me. I was a church baby, but I felt like when I went to college, I didn't want to be a hellion. I wanted to live for Jesus. So I made some commitments to Him in the beginning of that year, and by September of that year, you reached out and you said, hey, if you can come sing some songs. I was at first a little doubtful, like, wait, me, Jesus? But then I said, okay, I think I should do this. And so it was a journey from there, but it really, it gave me community, and it made me have a safe place. If I want to live for Jesus, I have people around me now. So it was definitely pivotal for me, for my life, completely.
Good. Yeah, Dee, you want to jump in on that?
Well, for me, I think I had recently graduated like the year before.
Right.
So to come back on campus, it was a privilege and an honor as well, because it was like to be among students who, was finding out their path and trying to figure out this whole thing. So be able to give back and provide wisdom and guidance and leadership, and even that sound ear for those who didn't know, or those who had questions, or those who were going through, to just be a part of that community and connect with those individuals who were there. I think it really touched my heart, because that's a part of my heart, to just connect with people like that.
Yeah. G alluded to this earlier about he never thought 12 years later A-Life would be what it is now, and there's been so much growth and so many students that have been touched through the ministry. What's the one or two moments do you remember most about A-Life, when you were a student to a leader to an alum, that you kind of always go back to and you're just like, wow, what an amazing time or moment that was?
Who goes first? I can go
Yeah.
I would say a moment that marked what we were doing, I felt in my heart, was when we went on that first retreat. The Bible studies were great throughout the first early semesters. They were good. But when you have a campus ministry, everybody has so many other things going on. They have their lives, their school, their local churches, and then they have this campus ministry that they're doing. So it's hard sometimes to develop, and later on we do small groups and things, but it was really hard to develop real community. So when we were able to get away together, and I saw people who we took 35 on the first one. And so I saw people who came who really weren't a part of A-Life at the time. When they came, and I just saw what the Lord had done in their lives through that weekend, it just changed everything. And I said, okay, we're probably going to be living for these retreats. How can we do this again? And so when we came back, everything ratcheted up. The attendance started to pick up, the worship team, and I think it went from like you and your sister to then the Joneses got it connected with it, and Janet. So it was, and Janet started coming right before, I think it was that year, and then we went on our first retreat. And so it just, everything ratcheted up after that first retreat. And that's when we knew we were really doing something, and that would give the momentum throughout the years once we did that retreat. So that was something that was very memorable for me. And we had a couple of sessions that were pretty powerful, and I thought was really good. There were times when after a meeting, some people would come to me and share how they were really blessed by what was happening. But I know at the retreats, we can really spend time in prayer and worship, praying for people, and really seeing the breakthrough taking place. So that was a game changer for me, and I feel the leadership.
I would say I have two moments. going on the retreats, because it's like when we would meet weekly at A-Life, it's like you don't have that much time to spend with people. But it's like when you went away on retreat, there was no interruptions, no distractions, because it was just you, the people you were there with, and the Lord. So being able to connect and really like get heart-to-heart conversations with people, finding out what really made you come to A-Life. How did you hear about it? Like, what's your life story? I think that was, for me, a connecting moment, because based off of those retreats, there's people that I'm still connected to, and we still talk and we still fellowship together. And I would say the second thing for me would be my last year in A-Life. And the reason why I say that is because sometimes when you're doing ministry, it's like, Lord, am I really making an impact? Like, does what I do matter to those outside, to those in the community? So for me, having the last year there and then having people, like, to see people's lives changed and transformed, and then also having individuals come up and say, because you spoke this word to me, or because you just sat with me and listened to this conversation, I'm here today. And it really touched me, because sometimes I would question, like, am I really making an impact, or am I just doing ministry just because it's something to do? So having that last retreat, last year in A-Life, and just seeing the lives that were impacted, really, for me, like, made it feel like, okay, Lord, what I'm doing matters, and what I'm doing does impact people, even if they never say it, even if they never come to me or it's never expressed. I know that what I do matters, and I know that what I do, I plant seeds in people by connections, conversations, just showing them the love of God. And so that for me was an impactful moment.
Before you go, Shay, as you were talking, oh my goodness, you probably remember this, but if you remember, we had meetings at your house back in New Brunswick, the good old days. And so, there was one of the last meetings that we had before we transitioned to leadership. I think we went around the room and we're just kind of talking about each other and the impact we've all had for each other. And I remember, I don't know if it was Sean Campbell or Bridget or somebody, they began to kind of talk about, no, it was Ajua. That's what it was Ajua. And she began to kind of just pour into you and talk about the impact that you had on her, from just being that selfless leader, the quiet leader, doing all the things behind the scenes. And then you just started crying, everyone started crying. And so you just kind of brought that moment back about just, and I think God was so intentional in those moments, is that he knew that you guys were transitioning, but he wanted to just remind you and just say thank you. Like, the fruit of your labor, this is it. And it's gonna, the baton is being passed on to the next generation. And so good.
That's good.
Shay.
For me, I feel like A-Life was the family that got created just authentically. I think it was so important that we were able, like Danira said earlier, to spend more time with each other besides just Tuesday nights or the Monday nights or the Sunday nights, because there were different nights that we chose throughout the journey. But I feel like, you know, even thinking about people who don't go to A-Life right now, or, you know, we've all grown up. It's been 12 years since, but when I look at them, I'm on Instagram, I see them, your family, I'm always praying for you, I'm always looking for you. I think A-Life just made me love, like, people who weren't related to me. No, I'm kidding. I love everyone. But, like, you never know how much you can really love people who aren't related to you. Like, that's my sister, that's my brother, and that's how the body of Christ is supposed to be. We're supposed to be looking out for each other. So the fun, I think, created that. I think we had great times being wrecked in the presence of God, but then it was like, I mean, not to take from that, right? But like, we were wrecked in the presence of God, and like, we got this healing together. We were exposed with one another. We shared where we were going. But then we also just had fun. Like, I didn't hang out with you in college, but now we're all here and we're becoming friends. And so to me, it was just like, A-Life just gave me a big family, another family that would always continue to grow. Because it's 12 years. And even when I look at A-Lifers I don't know, I'm like, they don't know what they're in for, but this is a lifetime. Like, we're all family. So
good.
For me,
And I would even add to that too, as you all were talking, I'm like, man, another thing that impacted me was the team. You know, we had our executive team, which we met every single week. You know, and then we had our leadership team, which was everybody, the lead team, right? Everybody who served, and just to see that evolve and grow, and over those last couple of years, it's 25, 26 people, you know, that were coming who like now, who are college students, who are not college students, who go to Rutgers, who don't go to Rutgers, you know, and it was such an eclectic bunch. And so I really looked forward to that, you know, to those league meetings, and then most importantly, those weekly exec meetings, because we would not only get things done, but we had a lot of fun. And that kind of rhymed, you know. You know, we got things done, but we still had fun. And that was awesome. And then I would say the second thing is, when I transitioned to Orlando, I was able to take a lot of camera footage, because in 2010, that's when I got my Canon 7D. That's when it was like, oh, you got a Canon, you got DSLR, new things. And so I remember taking it to A.Life, and Maul was all over that camera. Yeah, you know, it was really fun trying new things with it. But we started videotaping, and until this day, I still go back and look through the archives. You know, and anytime when I was in Orlando planting a church there, and if there was times where I would get discouraged, I would look back at that footage and see what the Lord was doing and still is doing. You know, that you are a part of something much bigger than yourself, and it matters and it makes a difference. And so I can't get caught up in the other things and trying some time to calculate everything, and just sometimes it would settle me. So it was great being there and doing A.Life, but it's also really been a blessing to see where it is now, where it's going, and to look back and say, man, look what the Lord has done.
So good, so good. It's funny, you think about Peter's life and his journey as he was a disciple with Jesus while Jesus was here, and then transitioning to his apostolic and sharing the gospel. There's so much growth in Peter through that journey. While Peter did not know the end, the journey was developing him for the end. So my question to you guys can jump in. We were just kind of talking about highlights, memories, good memories. But if we're honest with ourselves, if I'm honest with myself, there were times within the 12 years where we missed a step, we fell back, we retreated. But we also learned from it, and we picked ourselves back up. So if you guys can maybe think about a moment, or maybe you're in it now, where you've seen the growth from a mistake or an error. Anybody want to jump in on that one first?
I got one. Go ahead. I want y'all to talk about
We're all eager to say, I'm wretched, man.
I think we got, I know for me, I'll speak for me as the leader, and at that time, you know, was really setting the tone of what we were doing. I believe in those latter years, probably the last 2 years, looking back on it, I feel like I pushed a little too much in trying to do so much. I developed in me the burden to pastor and to be an under shepherd, Jesus being the chief shepherd over his flock. But that burden really started to grow in me, and I was like, Lord, I want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to do church, and I want to do this. And so looking back on it, I probably would not have pushed so hard in so many areas. I mean, it was great. We had guest services, and we started all of these different departments. But at the time, I think that sometimes I may have gotten caught up into all the other things and not have really taken in every single moment. You know, and I think that's always something that I'm learning even now, in planting a church again, really pacing myself, letting things happen, not trying to push things to happen, but really just settling in and just responding to what God is doing in the moment. And when God puts certain people in place, okay, then we'll do that. Oh, there's somebody here, then we'll do that.
We're ready for that.
Exactly. And not feeling that pressure of trying to be all of this when we're not at that place. So that was growth in me from that time to Trent in Orlando, and now planting a church here in New Jersey.
It's wisdom.
I guess for me, I would have trusted God more with the journey. I think a lot of times I didn't trust that I was the one. And I say that because I remember right around the time I was going through this who, me, why me complex, like Bishop John Guns had come to Abundant and he shared and he said something. He said, if you're the one, you're the one. And so I had to, if I had trusted more and you said not push, but just pushed more, like went further into, okay, God, this is your picture of me. Like this is the picture you hold of me in heaven. So let me have the same idea of myself when I go before your people, so that I can minister most effectively and know that, you know, I love people best when I'm not concerned about what my flaws are or what I'm not worthy of or what have you. I think I wouldn't have been every once in a while like, Lord Jesus, you know, I think the pulling back, like Peter,
go for it,
I was going and that's like, this is good, Jesus, you're right. And then I'm like,
you gotta say.
But you know, I think for me, that is a theme in my life. I know now that like, if I'm going to go with Jesus, I got to go all the way. I have to not stop. And you know, so that's been.
Wow. Y'all hearing this, right? All right. Go ahead, D.
I would say there's two things that I can think of. Learning to love difficult people. Because it's one thing when you love those who love you back.
Good.
But to truly love like God loves, we have to love everyone, regardless of whether we agree with them or not, whether they're against us or not. So for me, learning how to love people and being stretched in those moments. Could I say that I've handled all situations correctly in loving people? No.
Right.
But have I learned from that? Yes, because sometimes it's not even in you having to say anything. Sometimes it's just being silent and not feeling like you have to say something to fix the situation. So learning that has really grown with me and has gone with me, and learning how to love all people through whatever journey they are in their life. And I would say the second thing was being present in the moment, because I felt like a lot of times I was more Martha than Mary. I didn't put so much focus on, okay, this is a time with the Lord, where I was spending of like, okay, we need to do this, that, and the other, and doing more work than really taking the time and in those moments to just say, okay, I'm gonna sit back. These things can wait. Let me take this moment to sit at the feet of Jesus and soak in. So for me, I would say that being more present in the moment and letting the work get done when it gets done, not letting things just fall by the wayside, but being more present in those moments. For me.
Come on.
It's funny you mentioned that. We were at the retreat for the alumni retreat. You guys remember like 2 years ago, I think it was 2017. And we had a lot of alumni come back and you came back as well. And just, we haven't been in interactions in a long time, but I just noticed it was just a different Daenerys. There was a more present to the presence of God Daenerys. That I was like, wow, God, you have literally shifted her to a place where she knows she's gifted in the administrative, but you don't want to neglect those moments where she's encountering you in your presence. And to me, that just speaks volumes to our current generation and then the future generation to come after us as well. That when they steward this campus ministry, that they're not missing out on the moments. If I had to look back over the 12 years of areas where I've tripped up and messed up, the list is uber long. But one of the things that I think it kind of encompasses all is that when you have such great success year over year, you start, and kind of what G was talking about, you start to get excited. You start to want to move quickly. Growth. Like,
more people.
And so one of the things that we had to check ourselves as an entire ministry was 2.5, 3 years ago, where the numbers were growing, people were coming out, alumni were staying, and the little birdie in people's ears was like, yo, this could be a dope church. And so one of the things that I learned as a leader, while I didn't want that to be the emphasis of A-Life, because that's not what the Lord wanted it, I had to learn how to become more vocal and more demanding and setting a culture that didn't allow a culture to set the direction. And it was humbling. I had to repent. I had to really just go at the feet of the Father, but that put me in a better place of how to manage better, so that we can grow. And honestly, it wasn't until we got back in alignment of the core values and vision of creating an environment where those far and near to God can experience the love of God. And we're doing this by serving, leading, discipling, that when we got back into alignment, that God began to open doors for other campuses. And that's what we're operating and moving in. And I think even the fruits of that is what's happening in this year, this month, with Revival City. So I'm just curious with you guys being kind of the forerunners with Revival City, and just kind of tell us and talk to us a little bit about now that transition. You've all transitioned out of leadership at A.Life. You all been doing other things ever since, but now this new venture has been placed at the team.
Bringing the band back together.
Yeah, right.
Well, you know, it's been great. I feel that the time in Orlando was so divine.
Yeah.
And sometimes in the flesh, you know, you start calculating things and looking at things, and sometimes you can have a God perspective. And then there's sometimes you can have a natural perspective where you feel this and you feel that. But I know whenever I look at it from a spiritual perspective, I can just see where God was leading us, leading myself and leading us all this whole entire time.
Right.
This whole entire time.
So
he's been, our stories have been connected this whole entire time. And so now coming back and planting a church, and that church that's connected with a house of prayer, and it's just been, it's been easy. Challenges, always. There's nothing you can do without challenges. But it seems to me, and you guys can, you know, speak on this, it just seems that it's easy. He says, my burdens and my yokes are easy and they're light. And when you're in God's will, there should be, in the midst of the challenges, there should be a sense of ease, you know, and a sense of peace. And that's exactly what I felt when we started A.Life. And now here again in planting mode of starting a local church. I just sense the ease. It's no striving. That's kind of the word that me and Ali say all the time. Just no striving. No striving. We're not trying to conjure up. We're not trying to do all of our own things, but it's really no striving. And so now I'm just so excited about what God is going to do in the region, of course, in North Jersey, but most importantly, even connected with A.Life. And it's just been great to be back and really come back in and start working together with you in leadership, and seeing what the Lord does with the local church and the growth of the campus ministry. So it's been great.
What was the question again?
So as you transitioned out of A.Life in 2013, I think. 12, 13, 14. Yeah, so 2013. So since then, from 2013 to 2019, there's been a lot of things that's been taking place in your life, personally, professionally, spiritually. So just talk about that transition, and then now even being on the executive team with Revival City, what has this entire process been for you? Because it's not always easy transitioning from something that you've been doing for so many years to maybe there being nothing to now something again.
I think, well, first the transition process, that initially that was difficult for me because it's like my baby. Like, I've given birth to this child and now I have to put it in the hands of someone else. How do I know they're going to take care of it? How do I know it's going to succeed? But it was a matter of trusting the Lord with that which he began, that he's going to complete it. And whether I'm in it or not, whoever he's placed at the head will be faithful to run with it. So having that transition process was a little bit difficult for me, but I overcame to see that there are people who are running with it and just as passionate, if not even more passionate about doing the work of the Lord. And then transitioning and even being part of Revival City, because I've had experience with A.Life and being in leadership and learning so many different things, like Pastor George is saying, it's easier because then it's like, okay, I remember we did this. Okay, I remember, well, what about these things? But then also too, not only making it being it like an easy moment for me, but not completely easy, but it's not as challenging as it was initially starting A.Life, but also those who are new and who's not done something like this before, providing guidance, and so that they can understand that it doesn't have to be as hard, and like you were saying, there's no striving. Like don't get caught up in being Martha. Let's take these moments of, yes, there may be moments where you have to do the work, but let's take these moments when God encounters us to be present in there. These other things, you have an issue with someone, it's okay. Let's take this moment, let's be present with the Lord, so then that will remove any frustration of being in ministry, of the work of it, when you're present in those God encounter moments. So for me, just that ease and that understanding and the things that I've learned from being a part of A-Life, now transitioning that into Revival City and also pouring it into some of those individuals who are on the team who have not experienced like this. And of course, there's going to be even stretching moments, because now it's not A-Life, it's a different venture, it's a different moment where you're learning. It's a church, like a whole church, not like a college ministry, which is church-like, it's a whole church. So having that, a whole church,
no days off. It's
no days off.
Every week.
And
like
it's funny you say, sorry to even cut you out, you say no days off. I think it was me and Wall was talking about this the other day. We were like, man, May comes, we are off from A-Life, you know? And so you're a 9-10 month ministry church. There's no days off. And so it's a different type of planning preparation, so that people are not feeling burnt out, but yet the ministry is still flowing as well.
Yeah, it's real. It's real deal.
And that's what I think is important in building teams as well, so that it doesn't feel like everything falls on you, everything that you have to do. But when you start to build those teams and pour into those people who can take the baton and run with it within the ministry, I think that's what helps to take the burden off, but then helps to focus on the vision. Because it's like when you're focused on the vision, it's like you're able to, it's like almost like the Lord is downloading additional stuff to you. But it's like when you're worried about, okay, let me focus on this ministry and that ministry and that ministry, because you don't have people leading it, then it's like you're partially, your vision is almost like partial, because you're trying to focus on what the Lord is saying, but then there's all these other things you're trying to pour into as well. So I think it's just a great moment of learning and growing and being stretched, because who wants to stay comfortable in their position for the rest of their life? Stretch me, Lord. But not
just don't leave the stretch.
I gotta say something before I forget, and Sean is gonna totally understand why I'm doing this, and we have to put this in. We have to put this in. So when I think about A-Life and even the development, I had gotten married in 2009, and when my wife, when we had gotten married, that's when I felt that A-Life became something more than just like this little Bible study. And my wife really played a huge part in that. Of course, we were having children at the time, and Trey was coming on the scene, and so many things were going. But it was really her support as well that really helped. I remember that first in 2010, the first retreat, and I wanted to do it, but I was getting a little cold feet, and I just didn't know, how it was gonna look, and just her support, walking me through that, and just like, it's gonna be fine. And once I knew that I always had her in my corner, it was like, I knew things were gonna be okay. I mean, she was gonna be fine with me. And so I believe that also played such a key role, and it wasn't easy for her at the beginning, because it became a lot, because Tuesdays is a lot, and you're not just Tuesdays happen, but there's a lot of plans that come into Tuesday. From the text messages of who's going to be there, who's not going to make it, and before you know it, you're the one loading everything in.
Still loading,
right? But over time, the team began to grow. So I know that was also a pivotal part for me in leading the ministry. Once my wife came along and really just helped me out emotionally as well, to do what we did.
We would not be in a position without our support. System.
Absolutely.
And, even if you're not married, some of us have family members, friends, and that we unfortunately won't be able to spend as much time with them, because we've been given a responsibility to lead a ministry. And so those are the people that you have to constantly thank. And then when you have kids, added on to it. It's
full-time jobs.
Full-time jobs and all this
Frey,
stuff.
I love you.
Yeah, they already know it. It's just, you're forever grateful for them. And you realize that God has literally placed that spouse for you. Like, that is who you're supposed to be married, and whether you knew it from before you met them, and God has positioned them. So I know we got a few more minutes left here. So Shay, just kind of talk about your transition, and then we'll all close with just kind of a parting shot, 30 seconds each. Words of wisdom that you want to just leave out to the next generation.
Okay. So when I left A.Life, well, part from A.Life. The first time I came back.
Got it.
Praise the Lord. But when I left A.Life in, I think it was 2017, I was really excited about some things. I know that God has been He's been speaking to me about sharing and just doing more for the kingdom. But in that, there was a lot of hardship as well that came personally in my life, and it was hard for me to kind of like, I guess in that moment, I really wasn't my best self for a while. I was like, who am I, God? Where are you, God? You know, I don't even know anymore. And I think that's why community is so important, because it's like they're the buffer. You don't know, because I think a lot of the problems I had before, but they just got bigger when, you know, you didn't have so much community around you. That was new community. I mean, Revival City was new community, and still is new community that I'm so excited about. And I feel like, hey, these are people like my age, like my kind of people too. And so it's like, God really, like, even though I am in New Jersey, because I used to want to move away, and just different things like that, you know, you have your own plans, and then they don't happen the way you think they're supposed to happen. So you're like, hey, Jesus, what happened? But hey, guys, you don't have to keep all this in the video if you feel like it's too much. But keep that if you want. But in all of that, I feel like God had always just been pulling me in, and like when you were marked for something, you're not gonna go too far. It's like I used to call myself Jonette to be funny, like, you know, but it's not funny to be Jonah. You have to come out. You have to do what God has called you to do. So I think I'm in this place right now. Like, if I don't listen, I'm going to ruin my life. and God has really brought me to like being sound in this place where, you know, this is who I am. I have to be okay with it. Not even okay. I love that this is who I am. This is what God called me to. So I think the running can cease if you surrender, and you get out of the wilderness pretty easy. I don't know if I answered the question.
You did, and you actually brought something up that will probably be a message someday. Just about community is great, but sometimes community can mask a lot of hidden things. And I think sometimes God pulls us out of community so that He can really get our attention and just talk to us. So that then when we go back into community again, we're more transparent, we're more honest, and we can really be a great steward and vessel of what God has in us as well. So round table, as we close out, we had a lot of great talk about the past, the present, even the future. But now we're really speaking directly to the future leaders, the future A.Life, the future whoever is watching these podcasts. What are some things that you want to just leave people with? I'll start up there with Daenerys, Shay, and then we'll close out with Pastor George.
A few things. That everyone's a leader. So don't feel like because there's a leadership team that you're not a leader, that your life doesn't matter. You're leading in everyday life. So know that you are a leader and that God's called you to lead and lead well. Another thing is to love. Just when you going back to love, like when you understand your identity as a son and a daughter, it transforms the way you perceive and the way you see love out of a different lens. But when you operate and you don't understand when a person doesn't have that understanding and that knowledge of their identity in Christ, then their love is skewed by everything else that's come before that. So understanding that you are loved, you are a son and daughter, and that God loving you, you're able to love people, and that's all people, all races, all shades, all creeds, all of everything. And the final thing is to just enjoy the process. Like, enjoy this moment, because there's going to be a point where you're going to transition to something else, and God is going to move you to something else. So enjoy the process, enjoy where you are, learn all you can, immerse yourself in it, build community, and trust the Lord throughout it all. I remember throughout the journey of A-Life that there were moments where we shifted so many different times. I remember we had it was like a one time, like once a month, I forgot what it was called, experience.
Yes.
And having to trust our leader,
Yes.
but seeing that he was walking in faith, which increased my faith.
Yes.
And trusting the Lord, like, Lord, you're doing all of this. Like, if you're speaking to our leader regarding this, then I'm going to trust you and trust the leadership and those who are above me. So trusting the Lord through this journey, I mean, he never fails.
Yep.
Period.
Come on.
That's good. Shay?
I would say honor is a big deal. I think you should never forget where you started as an individual before you even met the people that God brought into your life that changed things. And I think that when we remember how important it is to have community, we will take advantage of that. And not just community with people that God has brought into our lives, but also we have communion with Him. I think in my worst places, it was because I had fallen into my own righteousness or my own depending on myself. But when you have an audience with God and you have His ear, you can take advantage of that. And I feel like if you lose that place, then that's when things get off. But when you keep that place of intimacy with God, then you have a center. You have the body of Christ that you are a part of. And then you have Him and you have audience with Him. So take advantage of that. And what else would I say to the A-Lifers? I would say just enjoy it. Take a lot of pictures, laugh a lot, cry if you have to. Hang out with them all the time, because at some point you're going to grow up and you guys are going to be at different, like all over the country and maybe in another country, and you'll miss them. So just enjoy it. Have so much fun. I think that's really important, and stay with Jesus.
There's so many things to say, but there is a story that as I think would speak to where we are, and just reminding all of us as David sends the men to go and recover the Ark of the Covenant, which represented the glory and the presence of God. The Bible says they put it on a cart when they go to Abinadab's house, and they put it on a cart and they're trying to push it back to Jerusalem. And as they're pushing it, they hit a little bump and it goes to fall, and a young man touches it and dies. So then the story goes on to say that they go from not pushing it, but then they start to carry it, and they carry it back to the place. And David, they celebrate when they get the ark back, the glory of God, the presence of God, they celebrate. And so I would say that we must always remember that we don't have to push. It's the glory and the presence and the purpose of God is not to be pushed, it's to be carried. So I believe A-Life is carrying something. It's carrying something that everyone that's a part of A-Life, of course the leadership team, just never forgetting that you all are carrying something, and that we don't have to push it, we just got to carry it. And so when we see a retreat grow from 35 to 75 to 105 to 100 and something, the fourth year, to now 200, it's because we're carrying something, and we don't have to push, we don't have to fight, we don't have to, what was it, no striving.
No striving.
So A-Life, we don't have to strive going forward, we can just be faithful and carrying what the Lord has given us.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, that ends part one, and I say part one because this is too good to just end on this note. So we have some few other alumni that are going to come and just impart and share their wisdom. A-Life Uncovered, episode number 3. We hope you guys have been enjoying it.